brings you radical new turbo-thrust V8 engine design for smoother, quieter power. New, stronger safety girder frame. Your choice of full coil suspension or optional level air suspension. And the 58 Chevrolet brings you sculptured beauty filled with fresh, rich originality. With all 17 models, including 5 station wagons, Chevy puts punch in the old word new because
it's totally new, temptingly new, youthfully new, and truthfully new.
see, drive, and get the feel of the new 58 Chevrolet at your local authorized Chevrolet dealers now.
It's all new and almost too new, too good, too great to be true.
As far back as I can remember, I was always obsessed with the 50s and 60s. I used to watch The Twilight Zone at a very young age and remember being fascinated by the era. We now live in a time where everything seems to be completely mentally ill. I appreciate the past much more in my adult life, understanding the night and day difference in how things were built so much better back then, and how this new junk is being manufactured today. People put a lot more effort into their work back then, and it becomes very apparent when looking at the cars in the mid to late 50s and early 60s. I mean, these cars were unbelievable works of art. They looked like spaceships. Today's modern everyday vehicle is absolutely depressing compared to these giant masterpieces on wheels. Sadly, the more time that passes, less of these cars survive. I've always had an obsession with the old Chevys from the early 50 models into the Tri-5 Chevys, but my favorite has always been the 1958 due to how it really changed the future for Chevy car design. So when I came across one that had been abandoned for 40 years, I had to bring it back to life. I always felt like the 58 was so underrated and underappreciated. So today I'm going to try to change that. I'm going to show the journey that I've gone through with this car, from pulling it from a garage where it sat since the 80s to today where it's at now. But first, let's get into a little bit of the history of what makes these so cool. For 1958, Chevrolet models were redesigned longer, lower, and heavier than their 1957 predecessors. The 348 cubic inch 5.7 liter V8 was now available as an option. The Bel Air gained a halo vehicle in 1958. The Impala, available only as a hardtop coupe and convertible in its introductory year. Impala styling followed the basic lines of other Chevrolet models, but received special styling cues, including a different roofline, a vent above the rear window, unique side trim, and triple taillights housed in slightly broader alcoves. Two significantly cheaper models, the Biscayne, formerly the 210, and the Del Rey, formerly the 150, were also available during this model year. Chevrolet's design for the year fared better than its other GM offerings and lacked the overall abundance of chrome found on other sedans at the time. Complementing Chevrolet's front design was a broad grille and quad headlights. The tail received a fan-shaped alcove of both sides of the panels, which housed dual taillights. Despite being a recession year, consumers made Chevrolet the #1 make of automobile, and the Bel Air was at the core of Chevrolet's popularity, with its wide variety of body styles and models. Bel Airs could be optioned with almost every conceivable luxury within the Chevrolet line. The Nomad station wagon name also reappeared in 1958, with the vehicle bowed as the premium four-door Chevrolet station wagon, lacking the unique styling of the 55 and 57 Nomads. Most Chevrolet station wagon models had two taillights, one on each side of the body, housed in abbreviated alcoves, which were made smaller to accommodate the rear gate. A new dash was used as well. I feel the exact same way about an abandoned car. And not just any abandoned car. I don't really care about anything new, but if I see an antique that's been sitting in a garage or a barn for 40 years, 50 years, I feel like I have to, it's like OCD, like I want to save it. And I know that it's not possible to save all of them. I know that really well, but I get the same, I have the same appreciation for an antique phone or, you know, an antique violin that I would for an antique bank, you know, that's abandoned or anything. It's all interesting to me. I love anything from the past, and when I had the opportunity to buy this car and save it and put it back out on the road, you know, it wasn't really that bad. As you can see, it had its problems, but you'll see, you know, in the rest of the video. But for the most part, it was beautiful. I would have drove it just like this. But yeah, it was a really happy day. By the way, if you want to see this full series, it's on my Underground Creations YouTube channel, and for those of you that are watching from that channel, you already know. But the first thing I wanted to do is I just wanted to clean it, and as soon as I got it home, it started pouring down rain. A huge storm came, so it kind of got washed off for me, the first initial layer of dust, and then it shined up really nice, as you can see. But there's a lot of problems that, you know, you can't see, especially on video. You know, videos sometimes make things look better than what they are, and sometimes they can make them look worse depending on how you're filming. But this car looks great on film, but it does have its little dings and scratches and imperfections. And, you know, the previous owner did some things to it that I wouldn't have done, but I guess, you know, it was the 80s, so the last time it was touched, so, you know, you can see by some of the stickers and some of the things that were left behind in there from the 80s, and, you know, that was a pretty rough era as far as, you know, what people did to hot rods in the 80s. I wasn't really feeling it. The stench of rat urine or mice urine and you know, pellets was pretty overwhelming, as you can imagine, for a car that's been sitting that long. So I had to immediately take care of that. The trunk was the only spot with some surface rust and a lot of, you know, I sanded it back down to the primer basically and put some bed liner in there. But all in all, this project, these things like this, I think was like a 30-minute project. You know, it's not like it was that big of an undertaking, and, you know, a year later it still looks exactly the same. I just had to get it here, and this is always how you start, you know, unless you're really tearing it down and tearing the seats out and everything, which I didn't think was necessary. The engine was really decrepit. Paint was all chipping off it. There were leaves and debris and a lot of mouse droppings on that as well. Still has the old generator there. But yeah, it's the 283, but I believe it was upgraded with 305 heads. And I don't know if you'd call that an upgrade, but, you know, still has a single master cylinder in there. And, you know, I was pretty, I wasn't getting my hopes up that it would run. You know, I was kind of expecting to have to replace the motor. But yeah, I mean, all this stuff is pretty typical, you know, the setup and for the 80s. It was more, I think they were going more for like a muscle car look than a, you know, classic cruiser, you know, four-door. But yeah, I had to get a new alternator, which had a crack in it. The old one was shot, and it took, you know, 17 trips to the parts store to get this alternator because they kept sending the wrong one. But that's how these things go. You just have to expect those things. That's my buddy Ricky. helped out a lot on this. You know, just the initial getting it running.
Need gas a little bit?
It's my dude.
Yeah, try it. Try it again.
The largest rats, I keep calling them rats, but mice nests flew out of the exhaust and shot all over the street. It looked like 7 shredded pillows blew down the street. It was pretty crazy. Felt good to kind of blow it all out. And then the first ride, you know, as you can imagine, it was pretty exciting. But the brakes barely worked, you know, running off that one cylinder. And once I did get it, I took it to a different garage and started tearing it apart, and you know, it ran pretty weak, so I wanted to update some things and you know, check everything. This is the first time, and it was pretty crazy, you know, the amount of sludge in there. I thought, you know, it was shot. I had no hope for this motor. I was just ready to replace it. But at the time I was still working on the 48. I had just purchased, you know, 2 brand new engines, and I was like, I really don't want to spend, you know, the money right now. I'd love to get this one running and just do what I can to clean it up and see how it goes. And so far so good. But this engine underwent quite a few changes. If you'll notice, you know, this is kind of the first. This is how it was, obviously, when I got it, and I change it, which you'll see in a second. But it went, like, I changed things, like the valve covers twice. Like that, I don't even have I kept changing my mind on how I wanted to go with this, you know. But I really tried to clean it up the best I could, and I feel like it ended up okay. But yeah, I wanted to get rid of the old carburetor and, you know, upgrade it, and just the manifold. I put those Moroso valve covers on because I had them. You know, that wasn't my first choice, but they were brand new, so, you know, it was an improvement, I guess, in looks and performance. But, you know, it gets a little bit more involved. You know, putting this video together, you know, you forget all the little things that you do to a car, you know, until you watch it, and yeah, so that you can see how cruddy it was. Not that it's that much better, it's just a manifold and a carburetor and valve covers, but, you know, it really needed that clean out. And, you know, I wanted to replace the water pump and the radiator. It didn't leak or anything, and there was nothing wrong with it, but it's like, why not, while I'm in there, you know, spend the extra $200 and, you know, be safe. And that engine was, you know, worrisome enough. I didn't want it to overheat, so, you know, it's always good to have a good radiator cooling your engine down. So, and that radiator was really cheap. I think it was like $150, you know, brand new on eBay, and I still have the old one if I ever decide to take it back to original. I obviously, with every project, I save every piece, every nut, every bolt. It doesn't matter. Everything gets saved in case you want to take it back to original, or if someone wants that original piece, you know, that's all gold. You can't get rid of anything like that. I know all too well when I want to go buy something, even if it's like, you know, a windshield wiper, or, you know, if it's a lock nut that goes on a bolt for one of these old cars, you know, you're going to pay $30 for that lock nut, you know, or more. You know, a hood ornament, it's any type of trim, you know, you can't, even if you decide not to go with it, that trim is worth a lot of money. But yeah, I mean, you could see it needed replaced pretty bad. I mean, it didn't, it functioned, but and my plan is, with these old parts that I tear off, I just, you know, restore those as well. You know, I'll sand them, wire weld them down to bare metal, and give them a new life as well. on something else. Yeah, it cleaned up pretty decent. I also cleaned up that battery tray, and you know, everything else gets cleaned up. I don't have every detail in here because this video would definitely be over an hour if I, and you guys get the point. If anyone wants, there's the battery tray kind of done, but if anyone wants to see this process in full, you can watch the whole series on my YouTube channel, and also other car builds and many more to come, because I'm kind of obsessed now that I know that I can do it, and it's really not that hard. Some of this stuff was intimidating, you know. I can do certain things. I've always been into cars, but when you're messing with this stuff, you know, it's simple compared to anything new, but it's still, some of the stuff's intimidating if you don't know what you're doing, like, and it's you're on the road with other human beings, like you don't want to kill anybody or yourself, so like you have to kind of be sure of what you're doing with certain things. Anybody can spray paint a car, but when you're dealing with, you know, engine components and drivetrains and transmissions, anything like that, like you can't skip any steps. I tore the dash down and, you know, sanded it all down. I wanted to paint it all like a tan color to kind of break it up and like kind of match with the ceiling. The ceiling's like a light tan and or like a beige. And I left some of it steel and just, you know, painted certain parts of it, which I'm not 100% sold on that. Like, I don't know how much I like that, but it's fine for now. And also, since then, I've gotten a clock, and I'm going to delete that radio, that huge hole in the dash. But this fender really bothered me. You know, it was gray, and I sprayed it early on just to kind of be able to look at it without being disgusted. And I only put one coat on it just to like kind of cover it. But this day I was just like, you know what, like I need to fill these holes because they don't match up. I need to just put this, I had this fender spear, you know, $400 fender spear sitting in my garage for, you know, months. And I was like, today's the day I'm putting it on. So, and it, you know, this is a driver, you know, anybody who watched my videos, like I go to car shows and I drive it all over the place. I'll take it to the grocery store. Doesn't matter. I drive it, you know, a couple times a week. It's not just like a once a month, you know, ride around the block. So I don't really want it to be perfect. And I know that that's kind of like a cop out. People say, well, you would love a perfect car. It's like, of course I would love a $30,000 paint job on this thing. Of course I would. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to drive it either. Like, I'd be so paranoid. You know, like this car, I don't care if a rock jumps up and puts a, you know, scuff on my fender or on, you know, the front of my hood or on my grill. It doesn't matter. I can just, you know, wipe it down and hopefully it'll just add some character. Because I you know, maybe someday, you know, as I move on and get, you know, more into these builds, you know, maybe I will do a car that's like, you know, higher on the level. But, you know, for now, I like just building drivers. But it never ends. Even if you think you have a, you know, the best car, there's always more you can do to it, and you can see the difference in the fenders. But yeah, it's this was before a car show. You know, I just gave it a quick bath, but you know, a lot of things change even from this point. Like at this point right here, I thought I was like done. I was like, yeah, I'm good. I can go to the car shows now. And then, you know, so much has changed since since this. But things people wouldn't even notice. But, you know, that's the way it is. But I was loving the way it looked this day. I was just like, man, you know, I just wanted to do a walk around because it is definitely, it's beautiful. shows it. Yeah, the grill really bothered me, so I bought this grill. It was used, and I got it for really cheap, and they're usually really expensive. And, you know, I painted the backside black just to... I don't really know why, because it wasn't necessary, but I cleaned it all up and sanded everything. I put about 4 coats on the grill itself. And that's what's cool, you know, like, it's not chrome, but they weren't chrome anyway to begin with. They were just like this, and if it gets damaged, you know, the old one was so bad, but if it gets damaged, I can just spray it again, you know. But the old one was bad because the previous owner, his son wrecked it into a tree, had a little bit too much to drink one night, and so that's why the fender and everything, obviously, if you didn't notice, it was wrecked. So, but it was very minimal. Now here's the disc brake conversion that I can't drive on because, you know, these are 14-inch wheels, which really left me in a bind, but I upgrade the wheels, which you'll see later. But with the disc brake conversion, I added, you know, I got new plugs and wires, new dual master cylinder, valve covers, air cleaner. There's other things too, but I just can't even think of them right now. But there's with the new wheels, and you know, this is kind of how it ended up, and that's where it's at today. And you know, I love it. It was a great experience, and I plan to probably do more to it in the future. But if not, you know, so be it. I think it's good how it is.
Check it out, man. I mean, this merch is like really sick. Check me out, bro.